Bachman for Law and
The
Crime.
defense is going to continue their case at around 9:30 a.m. That's when we think court is going to start. We're going to provide a live feed once we have it, and we expect that the defense will call Donald Smith's son to the stand. You can imagine what that might be like. I want to let our viewers know that we're also watching another case very carefully here on the network, and if there is an update, if something happens, we're going to make sure to go to it. This is a case out of Wisconsin. This is the case of George Burch. I'm sure you've heard about it. We talked about it yesterday on the network. George Burch is charged with intentional first-degree murder in connection with the death of Nicole Vanderheiden back in May of 2016. Nicole's body was found 3 miles from her home. She suffered blunt force trauma to the head and strangulation. Now, why is Birch on trial? Birch is on trial because his DNA was found all over her body. The cell phone evidence from his device shows that he was in 4 key locations that night, including the crime scene where she was killed and where her body was found. Now, you might think that this is an open and shut case. Guilty, right? Not so fast. The defense said, despite all that evidence, we're not refuting anything. Because even though his DNA is on her, even though his cell phone evidence pinpoints her into that location, he wasn't the one who did it. It was Douglas Dietrich, Nicole's boyfriend. They are claiming that he is the one that did this. It's fascinating. As soon as we have a live feed in that case, or as soon as there's an update, we're going to make sure to go to it. Real quick, I want to bring on our special guest for the morning, attorney Jonna Spilbor. Great to see you, Jonna.
Always good to be here with you, Jesse.
Real quick, before we go to break, what do you expect from Smith today?
Oh, please. If ever there was a case that screamed death penalty, this same juror that I think broke a record in coming back in under 15 minutes with a guilty verdict is going to vote for death. He's not going to be humanized enough in this penalty phase to change their minds.
Well, that's not an unbiased juror right there.
I know, I am.
You wouldn't make it
not
on the jury pool.
This guy is the worst of the worst, Jesse. And we had covered this together earlier in the week. This was, he did not have a defense. Donald Smith did not have a defense. I refer to this as a slow plea, meaning the defense had to get through the guilt phase to move on to the penalty phase to try to humanize him enough to appeal to at least one juror, because if they don't have a unanimous verdict in the penalty phase, he's not going to get put to death. So here we are now, and I don't think his son is going to be able to humanize him enough.
It seems the defense is going towards the route of this guy has a sickness and he can't be cured, and because he can't control his impulses, he shouldn't be sentenced to death. It's an interesting strategy. It's a colorful argument. Will it work? That's what we're going to watch today when we have a live feed. That's what we do here. We cover it gavel to gavel. You're not going to want to miss anything. We're going to go to a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the Donald Smith case. Examining this guy is not an easy thing. That's why I have with me right now attorney Jonna Spilbor to talk a little bit more about it.
Yeah.
Again, you have to break this down for me. What separates an evil murderer who deserves the death penalty from somebody who has a sickness? I'm listening to Dr. Holmes. I'm not sure I get it. What do you see?
I'm not sure why she's testifying on behalf of the defense, to be honest with you, because she's really putting a nail in the coffin here. Look, he did not present any sort of defense in the actual guilt phase. In other words, he did not say, listen, I'm insane. I am legally insane, and therefore I can't be held accountable for my actions. But what she's trying to describe here is something that is akin to that. In other words, that he could not stop himself, help himself, could not appreciate the gravity of his offenses, and he had to know the difference between right and wrong, but he could not control his impulses.
Earlier before she said, but I know people who have similar problems and they don't become child pedophiles and rapists and murderers like he did, so he made a choice.
We all, we have different relationships with our parents, and we don't grow up to rape and kill people. And she flat out testified to that. But she's trying to put this in some sort of insanity light box so that the jurors will say, all right, well, wait a minute. He's wired wrong. He had all of these problems. If he didn't have all of these problems, then this would not have occurred. Maybe then he's redeemable and we should let him live instead of giving him the death penalty.
Jonna, we talk about what the defense's strategy is. I want to talk about the state's strategy. They called one witness yesterday, Carrie Anne Buck. She provided emotional testimony about when Donald Smith tried to kidnap her when she was a teenager, only, actually I should say 12 years old. She wasn't even a teenager yet. He approached her in a van. She ran away. She even had to hide in a slide in a nearby playground while he said, I know you're there, I know you're there. Why did the state only call one witness? Did they not have to do more?
I don't think they did. And look, the witness that's on the stand, the clips that we were playing, is doing a great job for the prosecution and wasn't called by the prosecution. Bringing in the one witness from a long time ago is going to have an impact on the jury in that they're going to say to themselves, wow, this guy's been at it for a long time. he's not going to stop now.
We know that he's been at it since the 70s. He's been involved in some sexual incidents and lewd behavior. But if I tell you, this witness put forth by the prosecution was a terrific witness for them. Carrie Anne Buck, I want to play you some of her testimony right now, and it's not easy to listen to, but it is important to listen to. Take a look.
Good morning, ma'am.
Morning.
Can you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
My name is Carrie Anne Buck.
Ms. Buck, where do you currently live?
Just outside Syracuse, New York.
And how long have you lived there?
I don't know, pretty much my whole life since the time I lived here.
Back in your childhood, did you live with family here in Jacksonville, Florida?
I did.
I'd like to direct your attention to September 27th of 1992. How old were you at that time?
13.
And on that Sunday afternoon, were you in your neighborhood leaving your house?
Yes,
Okay, was that after church that morning?
it was.
Where were you going?
I was going to my friend Tamara's house.
Did she live within walking distance of your house?
A few city blocks, yes.
As you were walking to Tamara's house, did you encounter a man in a van?
Yes.
Could you describe the van to me?
It was a gray van. The side windows were tinted. It was a Chevy, I believe.
And the man who was driving that van, describe him for me, please.
He was probably close to 40, shoulder length, dark hair, pointy nose.
Did you get a good look at him?
I did.
Did you see his face?
Mm-hmm.
Do you see the man who was driving that van in this courtroom here today?
Yes.
Would you please point him out and describe where he's seated and what he's wearing?
There at that table in the orange.
Your Honor, may the record reflect that the witnesses identified the defendant, Donald Smith.
The record was so reflected.
Ms. Buck, how did the defendant approach you in the van on the street?
He was coming toward me and had stopped. He pulled more toward my side of the road and asked if I knew a girl named Susie.
What was your response to him?
I told him no.
What happened next?
He asked me if I went to Southside Middle School. And I did, but I told him no.
Why did you tell him no?
Because he was a stranger.
Did he ask you if you wanted a ride?
He did.
And what was your response to him?
I told him no.
What happened after you told him no to the ride?
He demanded that I get in the van.
Obviously, you were 13 years old at the time. You described that he was somewhere near 40. If you could, best that you can, describe to the members of this jury how he demanded that you get in the van.
He told me to get the fuck in the van.
How would you describe his voice?
Mean. Scary.
When he said this to you, what did you do?
I ran.
Where did you run?
I headed toward my friend Tamara's house. At the time, it was all I could think of to do.
Did the defendant chase after you in that van?
He did.
Did you try to run to some place to find a place of safety?
I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. I tried to run to Tamara's house. At one point, he had cut me off at a crossroad. And I just kept running. And I did make it to Tamara's house, and no one was home. And I pounded on the door, and nobody answered.
safety behind the school.
I did. And
Where in that school?
Excuse me?
Where in the school area did you try to find safety?
Behind the school, there was a small playground. And there was a big, like a tube slide in the playground. And I got inside.
When you got inside the slide, did you try to conceal yourself, hold yourself under the slide so nobody could see you?
I did. I was holding and pushing out with my hands and my feet inside this.
Did you hear this defendant come after you?
I did.
What did you hear?
I was scared. I was slipping, and then I was so afraid I was gonna fall out and he was gonna find me.
Did you hear the van pull up to the playground area?
Yes.
Did you hear him say anything?
He said, "I know you're in there, you little bitch, and I'm gonna find you."
Did you try to remain hidden?
I'm sorry, what?
Did you try to remain hidden in the slide?
I did.
How long do you think you were inside that slide hiding from this defendant?
It seemed like forever.
At some point, did you hear the van drive away?
I did. I still stayed in there a little longer after I heard it drive away.
When you felt it was safe, did you run for help?
I did.
Where did you go?
My sister had another friend on a street close to the school, so I ran there.
And once you got there, did you call your family, your mother, your sister?
I did.
And did you all contact the police?
Yes.
Given how quick and how fast this happened, were you able to get a tag number on September 27th of 1992?
I wasn't. I was just trying to get away.
Did you come to see that van and that man again in your neighborhood in the weeks that followed?
Yes.
When did you see him?
He was outside my house.
Did you tell your mother?
I did.
What did you all do?
We got in the car and went to look for him to get the license plate number.
Were you able to get it?
Yes.
When you drove after him, did you make eye contact with this defendant?
I did.
Did he recognize who you were?
He did. He looked at me like he was going to kill me.
Did you and your mother then contact the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office and provide them with a tag number?
We did.
At some point in the days that followed, did you meet with a Detective Parker from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office?
Yes.
And did you tell him what happened?
I did.
And did he provide or show to you what is commonly referred to as a photo spread or a series of photographs?
Yes.
Were you able, back in 1992, at the age of 13, to identify the person who did this to you?
Yes. I will never forget his face.
The person who chased after you into that playground. Is this man who sits right here?
Yes.
Why were you so afraid?
I knew he was going to hurt me.
That's the testimony of Carrie Anne Buck, who said that Donald Smith tried to kidnap her when she was 12 years old. And as difficult as it was for her to say that and to testify, she's lucky because she was able to escape. The same can't be said for Cherish Periwinkle. Truly sad. When we come back from this commercial break, we're going to go live into the courtroom. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Law and Crime Live, everybody. Okay, we have a view of the courtroom right now, a live feed into the Donald Smith courtroom out of Florida. Again, this man, this convicted child rapist and murderer, the jury has to decide, will he be sentenced to death or life in prison? Right now on the stand is Dr. Joseph Wu, a psychiatrist, a witness called by the defense. Let's listen in.
Areas of the brain that are involved with things like emotional regulation, like the amygdala, and you can't do that kind of thing with an X-ray. Or you can look at things like...
Dr. Joseph Wu, a psychiatrist that is called by the defense as a witness to talk about what he found in regards to Donald Smith. Now I'm here again with attorney Jonna Spilbor. This witness is just providing some of his credentials, providing some of his analysis about how he conducted the study. It's more formulaic at the beginning before he really gets into the gritty part of it. As soon as he does, we're going to go back to it. Jonna, we know that the defense is now going to be calling 5 witnesses today, and the last one's going to be Donald Smith Jr. I don't know that much about Donald Smith Jr.
Right.
Do you think he's going to provide sympathy or point to the fact that my father has a disease? He's a sick guy.
I think he's going to be there, excuse me, primarily for the sympathy factor, and here's why. We almost have forgotten or didn't know to begin with that this disgusting person is a father.
Unbelievable.
He raised a child, right, who presumably is an adult, I'm assuming at this point. There is to try to humanize him. You've gotten all the doctors and all the psychiatrists who are going to say, he's got this condition, and he's got that condition, and he's not curable. Now you're going to bring in a human being who's going to say, I don't know, I'm assuming me and Dad went fishing every Sunday. Like, what is he going to say about this madman who has a proclivity to rape and murder little girls?
I'm just surprised he has a son, considering the fact that he lied to Rain Periwinkle, Cherish's mother, and said that he had a wife that had a $150 gift card. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, that's how this all started.
Yeah.
Donald Smith lured the Periwinkles in a dollar store, said that he had a $150 gift card for them, that his wife was on her way, going to bring them a card, and that they should go to the nearest Walmart to cash that card, buy some dresses for Cherish. What a good Samaritan he was. Problem for Rain Periwinkle, and especially for Cherish Periwinkle, none of that was true. There was no wife, and there was no $150 gift card.
Right.
This guy's manipulative. You hear witnesses put forward by the defense who are saying this guy has no remorse and he's manipulative.
And he said he blamed an 8-year-old girl for her own murder.
Let's talk about that. One of the witnesses that testified yesterday said to the fact, and again, what you're watching right now is a live feed into the Donald Smith courtroom. This is a Donald Smith brain imaging, just trying to show how his brain was actually studied. And there were some discrepancies in the way his brain works, because they're trying to show that he has a lack of impulse control, that his brain, the way it's set up, is not the same as everybody else.
Right.
And does that work? Trying to show that, hey, we're built differently. The people that are convicted are built differently than you and me?
Well, he's obviously wired differently, right? Because thankfully, the majority of us don't rape and kill little children. Excuse me. But he did not present this as a defense in the guilt phase. He's solely trying to use this as a mitigating factors to be used in the penalty phase. Now, the other thing, what bothers me about this is, okay, he's wired differently. His brain looks differently. He can't control himself. All well and good. Let's not forget, and I would be reminding the jury if I were prosecuting him, the man spent some time in jail. Like, if that's not a wake-up call, he's been breaking the law since he was 17 years old. He's now 61. He has spent time in jail. If you can't figure out, or if probation can't help you figure out, or parole can't help you figure out how to fix yourself, well, then I'm sorry, that's not a defense to your crime, and I don't even see it as a mitigating factor.
Do you see a problem in the criminal justice system that he was out to begin with?
And he wasn't even out. Jesse, he was out for like a minute. He was out for about 3 weeks. So is that a problem with the criminal justice system? Look, we have probation officers that babysit people, and parole officers that babysit people who are allowed to be out of the jails and the prisons because we don't have enough room to keep everybody in there forever. Is there a failure when they don't prevent a horrible crime like this? I will, at the risk of getting some bad tweets, yeah, there is a problem there. But how many inmates do we have to babysit versus how many people do we have in positions of parole officers and probation officers to make sure that that doesn't happen? If we can identify this man as the most dangerous, person that a particular psychiatrist has ever met. Why can't probation and parole do the same and make sure that he cannot be around children? Put ankle monitors on him. Put GPS tracking on him. Do something to keep this man caged off from the victims in the world. We did not do that.
I'll tell you what, Jonna, he's either going to be caged off for the rest of his life in a prison or he's going to be on death row. The options for him are not great, and his defense does want to save his life, even though we know reports have said that at first he wasn't so keen on spending life in prison, because we all know what happens to people that are convicted of child rape and murder. They don't fare so well in the prison system. No. What I want to play for you right now is, again, we do have a live feed in the courtroom. Dr. Joseph Wu, a psychiatrist, a witness for the defense, is just providing some background information about how he conducted the study of Donald Smith. This is more formulaic, more procedural at the beginning. As soon as we get into the nitty-gritty of it, we'll make sure to go back to it. And I think we actually do have some activity in the courtroom, so let's go to it. Let's go back to it.
Severe neurodegenerative disorders resulting from traumatic brain injuries that likely occurred when he was 9 and 20. And so I'll be discussing those in my presentation today.
Okay, what slide would you like me to start with?
Can we go to the next slide, please?
Yes, sir.
So the first one that I'm going to talk about is MRI quantitative volumetrics, and if we could go to the next slide, please. So MRI quantitative volumetrics is the ability to be able to measure different parts of the brain, like the hippocampus or the amygdala, with very high accuracy. And this has only been possible in the last 15 years with the advent of computing technology. When I was a medical student and a resident, we used to measure all these things with planimeters, and it would take literally like a week to measure all different parts of the brain. But with advances in computer technology, we can develop algorithms that can categorize different parts of the brain and measure them with very high precision and accuracy. It's something that we used to do by hand manually. That would take weeks, we can now do in minutes. And so a lot of this was developed.
Again, this is Dr. Joseph Wu, a witness brought out by the defense, just providing the background, the foundation about how he studied Donald Smith. As soon as we get into the mind of Donald Smith, I'm not sure that's a place you want to be, but that's where we're going to be going. We'll make sure to go into the courtroom. I'm here again with Jonna Spilbor. Jonna, let's talk a little bit about one of the things that bothers me most about this case is I feel that the law enforcement, the media, could have done more when she went missing. When I'm talking about Cherish Periwinkle went missing, there was about an 11 to 10 hour gap before when she disappeared and her body was found, and they didn't even rule this as a kidnapping until hours later. Why?
Yeah, it was strange. I don't know whether it comes down to the fact that law enforcement didn't actually believe the mother who made the call. I don't know if they thought that this might have been more of a civil disturbance, if you will, versus some sort of, a child abduction. I don't know why there was a failure there. What I will say is it was part of the perfect storm of this case. I mean, there were so many opportunities, Jesse, for this crime to be thwarted on many levels, and it wasn't, and that just makes it even all the more heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking because we talked about it. You said there's the perfect storm, right?
Yeah.
They could have found her maybe earlier. He was out in society. He shouldn't have been. Shouldn't have been there. And we played the testimony of Carrie Anne Buck, who was 12 years old when Donald Smith tried to abduct her.
Wow.
She was lucky. She was lucky because look what could have happened to her.
But you know what's so impactful about her testimony? Here she is many, many years later as an adult. You could tell she was feeling the same fear.
She was shaking when
that
she looked
she
at her.
had when she was a child, trying to get away from somebody who she was convinced, and probably was correct, was going to kill her as a 12-year-old kid. And she still felt that on the stand, in the same room with that guy many years later. That is impactful.
Think about this, ladies and gentlemen. Carrie Anne Buck, who provided her testimony, 12 years old, hiding in a slide from a man in a van. And she heard him say, "I know you're there, I know you're there." If you can just think about the terror that this young girl felt, it's unbelievable. We are going to go to a quick break in a little bit. When we come back, we're going to show you a live feed back into the courtroom, and we're going to get into the mind of Donald Smith from Dr. Joseph Wu. Stand by. We'll be back in a minute. Welcome back to Law and Crime Live, everybody. We're covering two of the biggest cases in the country right now, the Donald Smith case and now the George Birch case out of Wisconsin. We have a live feed in that courtroom. Again, this man, George Birch, is charged with first-degree intentional homicide in connection with the death of Nicole Vanderheiden back in May of 2016. And despite significant DNA evidence and cell phone data pinpointing him to the location as the suspect, as the murderer, the defense team is saying that it was Douglas Dietrich, Nicole's boyfriend, is the one who committed this crime. Now, who you see on the stand right there is Aaron Kolinsky. He is a friend of Nicole's boyfriend, Douglas Dietrich, and he's testifying about what he saw and heard. Let's listen in.
Did you stay there for a while?
A little under an hour, I believe, was the time.
Did you drink at the sardine can?
All right, everybody, you are watching a live feed into the George Birch courtroom out of Wisconsin, a man who's charged with first-degree intentional homicide in connection with the death of a woman named Nicole Vanderheiden. Who's testifying right now? Aaron Kolinsky. Now, here is a friend of Nicole and Nicole's boyfriend, Douglas Dietrich. And the reason that matters is because the defense is saying George Birch didn't kill Nicole, but Douglas Dietrich did. So what the state is doing right now on the stand is saying, wait, Doug and Nicole, they didn't have any problems. They weren't fighting in the night of question. The defense is making all this up, really trying to undercut it. Johnny, you think this is working?
You know, so far so good. I mean, she's establishing a timeline. I think we should also let our viewers know, because this was bugging me and you cleared it up. They're sitting down because it's a rule in the courtroom to sit down when you ask questions of the witnesses. That irritates me, but it's not that anybody's being disrespectful.
Right, right. Just a little courtroom procedure. Yeah. Let's listen back in. And again, this is an important witness because this is someone who knew the victim and now another suspect in the case. Let's listen in.
And this was while you're at the sardine can?
Correct.
And I think you indicated earlier, at some point, on a scale of 10, where would you put Nikki's level of intoxication as an approximation?
6-ish, somewhere around there.
Was she dancing a lot or just one or two songs?
Yes, she was dancing quite a bit.
At some point in time, did you or anyone in your group decide it was time to move on?
Yeah, I think the girls wanted to move on, get closer to our home.
Okay. Now, were you still expecting Doug to show up?
Yes.
And did you guys try to reach out and make contact with Doug while you were there?
Yes, both Doug and Greg.
Did you see Nikki try to call him?
Yeah.
Was she successful?
No.
What happened?
I believe she was texting him and calling. It wasn't very high frequency, but I remember kind of touching base with her, and she said he wasn't answering.
So as far as you know, they were not communicating to each other based on what you observed?
Correct.
What happened then?
We were sitting out back, and the girls, we wanted to leave, so I told Angela to give Doug a call.
Had an Uber already been called at this point?
Uber, I believe so, yes.
So you guys are really getting ready to leave. The ride's almost on the way?
Correct.
You asked Angela to make a phone call then?
Yes, I did.
Did she do so?
She did.
Could you tell if that was successful?
It was successful.
Okay. Were you there when that happened?
Yes.
Was there any reaction from Nikki when she saw that Angela was able to contact Doug?
Definitely.
What happened?
She just was, wondering why, or I could tell she was just baffled as to why he...
Again, you're watching a live feed into the George Birch courtroom, a man who's charged with first-degree intentional homicide. The person taking the stand right there is Aaron Kolinsky, a friend of Nicole Vanderheiden, the victim in this case. And he was also a friend of Nicole's boyfriend, who the defense is implicating as the one as the murderer. And he's testifying to what happened the night she went missing and died. A lot at stake there. We're going to go to a quick break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Law and Crime Live, everybody, and we are live in one case out of Wisconsin, a big case, a case that's captured the nation's attention. This is the George Burch case, a man who was charged with first-degree intentional homicide in the murder of Nicole Vanderheiden, but his defense team is saying that it wasn't him who committed the murder, it was Nicole's boyfriend, Douglas Dietrich. Aaron Kalinsky, who's on the stand right now, is a friend of Douglas Dietrich, and he's testifying about what he saw the night in question, the night Nicole disappeared and wound up dead. That is what he's testifying to, and he was basically talking about the fact that Doug and Nicole didn't fight that night, but then something happened in the middle of the night. She started running off, she was upset, she started crying, and he tried to run after her. Let's listen in.